Did you have a question for me? No?
I already asked.
Well, I will share it with the rest of the class, okay? There are so many people that are so excited about the afterlife, but they don't want to go about it God's way. And people are dying and going to heaven and writing books about it and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think their books are valid. We have one real good biblical description of what hell is like. We have an afternoon in hell in Luke the 16th chapter. That's a real story. It's a lot of Bibles call it a parable. It's not a parable. A parable is a story about something. It's usually about a factual thing, but that's not a parable. That's a real, it has a real name, real people in that, and it really happened. Okay? We have an afternoon in hell. And we have an idea of what heaven's like because John is kind of telling us here in the book of Revelation. Now, I said I had a near-death experience or something one time. In 1972, and you look back and you, at your life, some of you are over 60, and even over 50. And by the time you get around 50 years old, there's a lot of things happen to you in your life. And sometimes it's just a wreck. All kinds of wrecks, one right after another and everything else. You just have a horrible life. I'm glad that some people have good ones, but sometimes some people have terrible lives. But then you can look back and you can kind of see how God used it for His glory and really for your own good sometimes. I got hurt when I was 21 years old working in the oil fields. And it destroyed my back. And I was, at times I was what they call a paraplegic. I had no legs. They were gone. And my spinal cord was right, the disc was right against the spinal cord, two of them. And I would be paralyzed for weeks at a time. I couldn't walk. And that was before OSHA and all the modern safety rules. You know, I lived before that. And anyway, the oil company that I was working for, the drilling company, they got out of the thing completely, and I had to get on welfare to get a operation for my back, and I was almost gone. I was almost paralyzed. I went in and it had taken me 2 years after I was hurt to even have an operation. And I went in and they told me, well, you know, you're going to be in a surgery for 10 or 12 hours. This is 72. This is a stone age, you know. That was really. I mean, that was a long time ago. And it was rough. I can tell you, the doctor went in there, he said it was a mess. He said, it's a wonder if you're even walking at all ever again. He said, it's a wonder you weren't paralyzed forever. And they operated on me. Only I was in there, and they had given me 80 morphine shots. I laid down for 19 days. It just rolled me back and forth because I had to fuse my back. And on the, I guess about 18 or 19 days into those shots, I woke up early in the morning. And I had a vision of Jesus coming down out of heaven, just walking down out of the sky. And he spoke Emai, Erkamai, Anon, and I didn't know Greek and I didn't know Latin. And what that means is I'm coming soon. And my hair stood on end, literally. I had been laying down. I couldn't get up and walk. And I've been rolled back and forth. You know, they rolled me back and forth so I wouldn't get pneumonia. And he walked down and picked me up out of the bed. And levitated me there just like this, talking to me. And then set me back down and walked out of the room. This is what I saw. And it was as real could be. I'm telling you. But when you're on morphine, you can dream with your eyes wide open. Now, that did affect my life, I'm going to tell And I saw it, and it was just as real as it could be. But I think that I'm a dreamer. But I acted ever since that like it was real, because I know the Lord's coming back. I've taught the book of Revelation a lot of times. And I set to studying, and like I said, things happen to you that are really bad. I like to starve to death. My family liked to starve to death back then. I mean, we were hungry. I didn't have any way to make any money or anything, and we just barely had enough, and I mean, I was scraping the barrel. But I finally got some disability, and I got a chance to go to school. For 2 years, I just laid in my recliner at home, studying every Bible book that I could grab. I had a guy that was going to seminary down in Bellflower, California. I told him to go down there and buy all these books for me. I had enough money to buy some books. They weren't that high back then. I studied all their textbooks. All of them. I just engulfed them. I was taking pain pills. And pain pills and me don't get along. When I take pain pills, I cannot sleep. I don't sleep. I would stay up 40 and 50 hours at a time and never go to sleep. And finally, my body would just go to sleep by exhaustion, but I was studying all that time because I couldn't do anything else. So now what I'm doing, teaching you and stuff, is what happened to me back then. And then when I could get up and I finally got where I could go, then I started going to the seminary. I wanted the seminary. I took the entrance exam and I passed all the remedial classes. I only took advanced classes because God put me down in a chair to where that's all I could do. So now that's a real story about how God can do things. Bad things can come in your life and God can turn it around. And what I have today with the education behind me, and I ended up going there for 12 years. I couldn't hardly leave it because I was studying. And they made me teach from the very first week I was there because I had already studied all these classes. And anyway, it's been quite an experience. But there is something. Now, what's going to happen in these last days? Even though I had my extraordinary vision, so to speak, which is, I don't think is valid at all, but it happened to me, you know. And I was from a charismatic background also. I was saved in a Pentecostal church, so that could have really, maybe it was the devil trying to lead me the wrong way. But you know what? I found out the truth in God's Word because I spent the next 12 years solid, actually about 14 years, just solid, just absorbing everything from the Scriptures. And I found out the Bible was written in Greek and Hebrew, so I started studying Greek and Hebrew. I had no other use for it. I never planned on studying Greek and Hebrew, but I studied it. We're in Revelation, the 11th chapter. We're going to talk about the two witnesses tonight. I'm going to read this out from the Greek from you. We're going to go look at some different verses in the Bible in different places. And your textbooks, which is my doctor's thesis on Revelation, it has a lot of my notes in it and the cross-references. So if you get that, bring that with you. You can kind of follow along even better than you can your Bible, but use your Bible and write some notes in it also. And it was given to me a colmos, a reed, a measuring device. Okay? Now, how many of you have seen these old rods that they used to have, measuring devices, chains? Remember those? A long time ago, they used these. This is kind of like what this is. This is a measuring device. And he's going to go out, he said, like a rod, Rabdo, saying, you rise up and you measure the holy place of the God, the dwelling place, the naos. That's the holy of holies, actually, of the God, and the sacrificial altar, and the ones worshiping in it. Okay? And Zechariah 2 and 1, in the Old Testament, Zechariah 2 and 1, and Ezekiel 40 and verse 3, and 42 and verse 20. These are cross-references in the Old Testament, and then Revelation 21 and 15 and 10 and verse 11, also, which is the last verse we were on. Okay? Now, The next verse says, and the court, the one outside of the holy place, you cast out outside, and don't you measure it, because it was given to the Gentiles or the nations, and the city, the holy city, they shall trample down. Months 42. Now, how many is 42 months? How long time is that? 3.5 years. All right, that's how long it is. The tribulation period. Now, your little charts that you have. Okay, the little charts that you have. See, and even this one right here, you'll see it, there's the middle of the week right here, so where this blue line comes down. I don't know why they made that line blue. That should be black or something, because that's Satan's path. I don't think it's blue. Anyway, you see here the two 3.5 period of time. The first part of the tribulation period is bad, but the second part of the tribulation is horrible. I got news for you. The second part is horrible. The first part is bad, but the second part is horrible. Now, we know that in the first part of the tribulation period that the Jews are going to make a covenant. There's going to be a covenant of peace. The whole world is trying to be brought into peace, and for 3.5 years we have a little bit of peace. All right? So for 42 months now it says there's going to be some bad things happen. Okay? And the city is going to be trampled down by Gentiles. This 3.5 years. Now let's go back and look at some things. The last part of verse 2, okay? Well, let's go back, let's go forward to 11:3. Revelation 11:3, and read that verse before we go back. And I shall give to 2 witnesses. Look at that, 2 witnesses. Now look at the word witness there. Matise. We get our word martyr from the word witness in Greek. Come right out of it. Martyr. Now these 2 are going to be martyrs, aren't they? Okay? They're going to give their lives. Witnesses of me, and they shall prophesy days 1,260, having been clothed in sackcloth. All right? These witnesses are going to prophesy. They're going to preach the gospel. Now, Brother John's a pretty good theologian over there. When do you think the church is going to be taken out and all the saved going to be taken out? The church age. When's the church age going to end? In the middle of the tribulation period? At the last or worse?
Beginning of the tribulation.
Beginning of the tribulation period. From the rest of the book of Revelation, why do we understand this? Especially during this period of time right here. Why? Who has the responsibility to preach the gospel today?
The church.
The church of the Lord Jesus Christ. All right? That's who has the responsibility to preach the gospel. Okay? And the churches are doing the job. Is it getting too cold in here for you? A little chilly? It is? No? Yes. Some yes, some no.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to turn that up just a little bit. Oh, yeah. No wonder it's set on 55. 55. All right. Well, we'll move it up just a little bit. Well, the church has the job of preaching the gospel, but we find out here we've got angels preaching the gospel, and now we've got 2 witnesses preaching the gospel. Okay? Now, if we were in the church age, it wouldn't be their job to preach the gospel. But since the church is gone, now, during that 7-year period of time, that tribulation is coming upon the earth, where is all the saved that were saved before the end of the church age, and the church, where is it going to be? What's it going to be doing?
Say that again, which one?
All right. All the saved over here, and all of the church. Where is the church and all the saved going to be?
Marriage supper of the Lamb.
The marriage supper of the Lamb, which takes place. And how long was a Hebrew wedding?
7 days.
7 days, 1 week. This is called Daniel's week. This is all called the church's week too, if you want to put that down there. The church's week. The church is up here with the Lord in New Jerusalem. and they're having a wedding feast during the tribulation period on the earth. We have hell on earth, and we have bliss in heaven. We have a marriage feast in heaven, and terrible things are happening on earth. Okay? Now, who are the two witnesses? These are two witnesses that are doing the job that the church does today. Now, who are they? We got all kinds of them. Let me just read you some of the guesses that these two witnesses are. Zechariah and Zerubbabel. You hear them about John? You've heard about those two guys, them two witnesses. We got John the Revelator. And if you go back in Revelation 10 and verse 11, and a lot of people use this verse to say that John is going to be one of the two witnesses. It says here that you shall prophesy again. Talking to John. Okay? Now that would give you some evidence that maybe John would be one of the witnesses. But that's not all. Okay?
Moses
We have,
and Elijah.
what?
Moses and Elijah.
Well, we're getting there. All right. We got Zechariah 14, 1 through 12. And Zerubbabel. Okay? He's going to be his fellow. Now this is what some people believe. It's going to be his fellow witness. Okay? And then we got John in Revelation 10 and verse 11, and also John the 21st chapter. Okay, and I think it's about 21 and 22. And then we got Elijah. Okay? And we got Moses. Now, Matthew 17 and verse 3. Let's look at that. Matthew 17 and verse 3, and let's go and look at some of the reasons why people think that these people are the witnesses. Okay? Zechariah is prophesying in Zechariah the 14th chapter 1 through 12. And people tie Zerubbabel in with him. And John, we looked at John in Revelation 10 and verse 11. Now let's look at Elijah and Moses, okay, in Matthew 17 and verse 3. Are you there, Brother Dan?
I am.
Okay.
And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Then Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah.
Okay, now read to verse 11. Go on down to verse 11.
Jesus answered and said to them, Indeed, Elijah is coming. First,
Go back to verse 10 first and then read 11.
and his disciples asked him, saying, Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? Jesus answered and said to them, Indeed, Elijah is coming first and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah has come already, and they did not know him, but did to him whatever they wished. Likewise, the Son of Man is also about to suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood.
Okay, that's good enough right there. Now we have pretty good evidence from the scriptures that Israel is looking for Elijah. Even today, when they have the Passover, they make a place for Elijah. And they leave the door open, and they go out every now and then and say, Elijah, Elijah. They're looking for him. They got a plate for him. They got his bread there, got Elijah's cup there, and there's a place for Elijah. And they look for him to be the one that ushers in the kingdom of God. Okay? Now, is that relevant? All right. And where's the kingdom of God? Over here. So Elijah is about as good as anything. Now let's think about Moses. Who was there with Elijah? Moses. All right. Now Moses. What about Moses? The Jews look upon Moses as basically his word and his name is equal to Adonai, the Lord. Okay? When Moses spoke, they considered him speaking for Jehovah himself. Okay? If you blaspheme the name of Jehovah, you were to be stoned to death. If you blaspheme the name of Moses, you were to be stoned to death. Okay? So, in the last days, if on come the scene Elijah and Moses, wouldn't they be valid witnesses? Well, they could be. And many people believe that. All right? So we got Zechariah, we got Zerubbabel, we've got John, we've got Elijah, and we got Moses. Now how about Daniel? You heard Daniel, haven't you, Brother John? Daniel's going to be one of the two witnesses, people say. Let's go to Daniel 12 and verse 4. All right? Daniel 12 and verse 4. Daniel, that's in the Old Testament, you know. All right. Who is there? Kathy, are you there?
But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will increase.
All right. So Daniel to seal up the book until the end time. Kind of like what he told John here, didn't he? Similar things. Now, many people believe because of that, and there's more, you know, you can go on here and look at more where Daniel is, and they say it's John and Daniel could be the two witnesses. All right? John and Daniel could be the two witnesses. And verse 12. Daniel 12 and verse 12.
How blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to the 1,335 days.
All right, what's he talking about? Talking about the tribulation period divided into two periods of time. All right? Into two periods of time. And basically, that's when the witnesses are going to be on the scene, and the witnesses are going to be witnessing during that period of time. But that's not all of it. How about Enoch? How about Enoch? All right? Genesis 5 and verse 23 and 24. All right? Genesis 5, 23 and 24. I haven't gone into this much detail with the witnesses before. I just tell you who they are before and just went on, but we're going to look at them a little bit tonight. Brother John, what you got over there?
So all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him.
All right. Enoch walked, and he was not. He was raptured. Switched up in heaven. Now, what happened to Elijah?
Taken to heaven.
Now, Elijah was raptured and taken into heaven too. Now, I want to be honest with you now. I think that it says, the Bible says, by 2 or 3 witnesses let everything be established. I believe the validity of the rapture was established in the rapture of those two people. Okay? Right there. But Hebrews 9 and 27. Now, this is why people say that the two witnesses are going to be Enoch and Elijah. All right? Who's got Hebrews 9 27? Hebrews 9:27.
And as inmuch as it is appointed for men to die once, and after this comes judgment.
Well, is it appointed unto men who wants to die? Sure it is. We're all going to die if the Lord doesn't come back. Everybody in this room is going to die if the Lord doesn't rapture us. Did you know that? We're all going to die. But you know what? Every human being except for Enoch and Elijah have died in history past. I don't think Enoch and Elijah are the two witnesses myself, because that it would be kind of, if God gave us an example that he can rapture somebody, why in the world would he send them back to die? Do you think he's going to send back his people here to die during the tribulation period? I don't think so. All right? But I wanted to tell you, and these are the verses that they teach, and why that Enoch and Elijah could be the two witnesses, all right? Now, Paul. Some people think Paul is one of the witnesses during the tribulation period. Paul. Well, Acts 13 and 47, and actually 42 through 47, we have there. Paul wrote the largest portion of the New Testament letters, didn't he? Very important character. Now, do you think he'd carry a lot of weight in the tribulation period if he showed up on the scene being one of the two witnesses? Sure he would. All right. Now we have another idea who the two witnesses are. Okay? The church and Israel. Have you heard that? Two witnesses, the church and Israel. All right. Well, we're going to see why they think that here pretty soon. All right. Now, these two witnesses are going to prophesy. They're going to do things that happen, like happened in the Old Testament. It's going to be like Moses. What happened in the days of Moses and Elijah? Okay? What did Moses do in Egypt? He performed all kinds of miracles very similar to what's going to happen during the tribulation period. Okay? Now, 11 and verse 3, and I shall give the two witnesses of me, and they shall prophesy. Look at the word prophetuusen. Okay? Our word prophesy came right out of that. The word witness, martyr, is from the Greek word there, martusen. Okay? 1,260 days, having been clothed in sackcloth. What sackcloth is a sign of? Well, mourning or repentance. Mourning or repentance. Okay? Clothed in sackcloth. Let's go to some Old Testament scriptures. Daniel 7:25 and 12 and 7. Genesis 37 and verse 34. 2 Samuel 3:31. Do you have these cross references in your books? Are they written down there in your, if you're looking at my thesis? 1 Kings 21 verse 27. 2 Kings 19 and verse 1. And Nehemiah 9 and 1. These are all scriptures. Okay? Anybody have any of those yet? Brother Dan, do you have any of them there?
Genesis what, 37 and what?
37, 34.
Daniel's.
Okay, you've got
12,
Daniel.
7.
Okay. Dan, what do you got?
I got Genesis 37, 24.
34.
34, okay. 37, 24. All right. Then Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son for many days.
Okay. Mourn for his son, sackcloth, mourning. Is the tribulation period going to be a period of mourning for Israel? Boy, they're going to mourn as a lost and only son, just like Jacob did there. They're going to mourn. Jesus said, you will not see me again until what? You say,
Blessed is he who comes.
blessed is the name. There are many Jewish synagogues today called Baruch Hashem. Blessed is the name. Boy, if I was a Jew, I'd want to be saved before the tribulation period. I'll tell you that much right now. Joel 11th, they used to ask him, well, what are you going to be? You going to go in the tribulation period in the kingdom, or are you going to be with the Lord? He said, I am part of the saved. I'm part of the church. He said, I don't want to go in that tribulation period. I want to go home. They can have it. Blessed is the name. Blessed is he that came in the name of the Lord. They're going to mourn, just like that. All right, Daniel, Luby.
7:25.
Yeah, and then 12 and 7.
He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and a half a time.
Okay, that means 3.5 years. Who's it talking about? Who's this guy talking about?
Antichrist.
The Antichrist. Now, I'm going to tell you what happened to Israel one time. There was a Syrian by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay? Now, we're going to see the reversal of what happened there. We had Antiochus Epiphanes come on the scene and devastated Jerusalem. He went in there, took over the temple, and actually slaughtered hogs on the altar and profaned the altar, denied the Jews any right of worshiping or celebrating any holiday or any feast days at all, and wouldn't allow them to circumcise, they wouldn't allow them to keep the Sabbath or anything else. And the Maccabees, all right, the Maccabees, they came and that family they had a revolution, and they took the area back over, and they rededicated the temple. And that's when they established the Feast of Hanukkah, which is our Christmas comes right out of Hanukkah. I don't know if you know that or not, but Christmas doesn't come from a pagan holiday. Basically, it comes from Hanukkah. All right? Hanukkah, they give gifts to each other, and they have gifts for several days. As a matter of fact, they give gifts, different gifts for several days. And they have dinners, and they sing songs and do all the things and celebrate. What happened is when they got the temple mounded back and they went in and tried to rededicate the temple, they found out that they only had enough oil, olive oil, consecrated olive oil, to light the candlestick for one day. Now, remember the candelabra that has 8 lights on it, on the Hanukkah? They prayed. They didn't have any way to make new olive oil. It took a week to make the olive oil, and it had to be consecrated and make sure. And if you put the wrong kind of oil or any substitute of that olive oil in there, it was death sentence. So they prayed, and the olive oil burned for 8 days. It was only one day's work. It burned for 8 days. And that's why they have the Feast of Lights. And Jesus even celebrated the Feast of Dedication, remember? Or the Feast of Lights in the Bible. Now, that was established, I believe, about 185 BC. All right? They celebrated the recovery of the temple from Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, the Antichrist, Antiochus Epiphanes, was a type of the Antichrist to come. Okay? And the Antichrist to come, he's going to reverse everything. Okay? He's going to reverse it all. Okay, Lupe, 725. Read that again. We'll understand just a little better now.
Okay. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and a half a time.
For 3.5 years, he's going to wreak havoc, and that's what it said right here in the verse that we just read. For 3.5 years, it's going to be in his hands, and the holy city is going to be trampled underfoot. Okay? He's going to ravage and pillage, and he's going to desecrate, and he's going to blaspheme the name of God. He's going to say he is God. Antiochus Epiphanes had coins struck that said, Antiochus Epiphanes is God. Right on the coins. Is Theos. All right, is God. Daniel 12:7.
I heard the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, as he raised his right hand and his left toward heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it would be for a time, times, and a half a time, and as soon as they finished shattering the power of the holy people, all these events will be completed.
All right. There's going to be a period of time, and the reason for the period of time is to bring Israel back to God. That's the whole reason for the tribulation period, is to bring Israel back to God, and they will be his administrators in his kingdom for 1,000 years on this earth, and they will celebrate at least the Feast of Tabernacles for 1,000 years. What's the Feast of Tabernacles mean? Remember we studied that a little bit. Feast of Tabernacles, what does it mean? Well, it was in the wilderness. Israel was provided with all the materials they needed to house and take care of them. And every year when they came into the Promised Land, they celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles, remembering when God provided. All right? And that's what's going to happen for 1,000 years. They're going to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Now this Antichrist, he's going to not allow any feast days or times or any of the Jewish calendar at all. He's going to change it. Okay? All right, who's got 1 Kings 21:27 and 2 Samuel 3:31 and 2 Kings 19:1, Nehemiah 9:1? Who has got any of these? John, are you over there anywhere?
21:27.
That's after he allows them at first to rebuild their
Oh yeah, they're going to rebuild the temple. The Jews are going to rebuild their temple. They're going to put their sacrifices back into order. They're going to have a sense of false peace. And the Antichrist is going to sign a covenant with Israel for 7 years this week. And then in the middle of the week, he's going to break that covenant. and he's going to stand in the holy place and say that he is God. Brother John, what you got?
1 Kings 21:27.
Okay.
And it came about when Ahab heard these words that he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and fasted. And he lay in sackcloth and went about despondently.
All right, now here we have old Ahab. He's even in sackcloth like Israel's going to be. They're going to mourn like one mourn for their only son. Now, 2 Kings 19:1. 2 Kings 19:1. Let's look at some of these things. Anyone over there in 2 Kings? You over there, Kathy?
And when King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes, covered himself with sackcloth, and entered the house of the Lord.
Israel know what sackcloth is. Do you think when they read the book of Revelation, when they hear the words of the Revelator, do you think that they might put on their sackcloth during the period, the tribulation period? Nehemiah 9:1 now. Nehemiah 9:1. Who is over there? Are you there, Brother Dan?
I am.
Okay.
Almost
9:1.
Okay, now for the 24th day of this month, the children of Israel were assembling with fasting and sackcloth and with dust on their heads. And those of Israelite lineage separated themselves from all foreigners, and they stood and confessed their sins and the iniquities of their fathers. And they stood up in their place and read from the book of the law of the Lord their God for 1/4 of the day, and for another fourth they confessed and worshiped the Lord their God.
All right. Well, there's Israel turning back to God. They're turning back to God. They're going to turn to God in the book of Revelation. When they see the Antichrist stand in the temple that he has built for them and say that he is God and change all their feasts and everything else, they're going to know they crucified the Messiah. And then they're going to start bawling, and they're going to be in sackcloth. You know, can you imagine how Israel is going to can you imagine how Israel is going to celebrate when they have their temple and they get rid of that mosque of Omar? Somehow that's going to happen. They're going to celebrate, but that celebration is going to be turned into mourning. All right? 11 and verse 4 now. 11 and verse 4. These ones, all right, these ones talk about the two witnesses. Okay? Now this is why people think they might be the church and Israel. Okay? The church and Israel. And these ones, they are the two olive trees and the two lampstands in the presence of the Lord of the earth, having stood. It's talking about the two witnesses now. What do we have? The olive trees and the lampstands. Okay? Israel is looked upon as the olive tree so many times in the Bible, and it's looked upon as the light of the world. Okay? In Luke and in John and in Acts, it talks about the church and Israel basically being the light of the world. Jesus was talking to his church and in the hearing of the Jews. And he said, don't put your light under a bushel. A city set on the hill with lights can be seen from afar off. What was Israel's purpose in this world? Why did God leave them here? To be his revelator. To be a light to the world. Okay? To be a light to the world. In the tabernacle, over here, in that tabernacle, there was a candlestick in there. It was filled with olive oil and it burned. And in the holy place in there, the Kadash, the holy place, that was the light where the priest served in there. They took in the bread to the table of showbread. They put in altars or incense on the altar of incense, and they kept the light lit all the time, trimmed the wicks on it, everything else. This happened daily in the tabernacle days. When they built the temple, in David's time, he gathered up all the materials for the temple. Now here's the temple. This is Solomon's temple, okay? They had a holy place in here, the Holy of Holies, okay? And they had, actually this is a little bit bigger there, they had the holy place. In the holy place, they had candlesticks in here, And they had the altar of incense, and they had the table of showbread in here also. Now, as far as we know, the real Ark of the Covenant was in this one and in this one over here, but never in any other temple. I gave you, on Sunday morning, I gave you a handout for the book of Maccabees, where the Maccabees had written down, and this is a factual history, and they said Jeremiah the prophet had been warned of God in Maccabees 2 and 2, 2 Maccabees 2 and 2, and that he took the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle, all that, and hid it in the Mount Pisgah, where God showed Moses the promised land. And it said it would be there until the end of time. Okay? And then he would show them where to find it. And then they would set it back up again. This right here was a weird building. I'm going to tell you, it was thick walls. Okay? Thick walls. And the candlesticks that were in here, and the walls are like this. Now, in houses today, they build windows for what reason?
Light.
To let light in the building. And how they build them, they gather light and put it in the building. This building was not built like that. This building was built up on a hill. That's Jerusalem. Jerusalem is on a hill, isn't it? How many of you have seen pictures of Jerusalem? Over there, if you look over there where the Mosque of Omar, basically that's where the temple was. Okay? On that hill. And they lit this up, and what was the inside of these walls made out of in the temple? Gold. And that gold was a reflector. How many of you have a flashlight? All right. It has a silver background. All mirrors at one time were coated with silver on the backside, weren't they? It was silver. Okay. Now they use other material, but back in the original mirrors it was glass and they had silver on the back. This mirror here, this room was a mirror, and it had gold. It was a gold reflector. And they would light this light, and you could see from many miles off, they said you could see the temple of God shining. It would gather all of this light and shine it out like a flashlight. It was a hill, a city on a hill. And Jesus said, a city on a hill cannot be hid. Israel was supposed to bring the light to the world, but Israel failed. Now, one good thing about it, Matthew 16 and 18, the churches of the Lord Jesus Christ are going to do their job. Not so much because of them, but because of the promise of the Lord. Matthew 16 and 18 says what? Somebody turn there, and then we're going to translate it a little more correctly.
And I also say to you that you are Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not overpower it.
All right. Jesus talking to his church and Peter there. The word church means ecclesia in Greek, and it means one's called out. He started calling them out where? At Galilee. Isn't that what he did? Did he start calling the church out at Galilee? Okay. And over here in Matthew, the 16th chapter, he said, you are Peter, but, a little weak adversative conjunctive particle, but you're Peter. What does the name Peter mean? It means stone. Stone and rock is two different things. Okay? Stone and rock are two different words. All right. Let's look at this. All right? This, look at these two words here. Very important. He said, you are Peter, Petros. Petros means the same thing as Cephas. Cephas in Aramaic means what? A little stone. A stone that you can pick up. A stone that you can throw. All right? Now, I'm going to tell you something. A stone that you can stumble over. How many times did Peter stumble in his life? He's like a tripping stone. Have you ever stumbled over a stone? All right? That's the kind of stone that Peter was. All right? Now, he said, but upon this gigantic foundation stone, like Moral Rock, like the Rock of Gibraltar, like Jerusalem, a great big rock that's on top of Jerusalem, upon this gigantic foundation stone, feminine gender, All right? Upon this gigantic stone, I shall be building my church. My church, not on Peter. Now, who did Peter say that stone was?
Jesus.
He said the stone was Jesus. Now, Peter, the Catholics say that's their pope. And they said the church was built on Peter. The church wasn't built on Peter. Half the Protestant world thinks the church was built on Peter. They got it from the Catholicism where they came from. The church is built upon Jesus Christ, the chief cornerstone. Jesus said that he was a stone that what? That the builders rejected. In the Old Testament, he's called the rock of Israel's salvation, isn't he? So we know who the rock is. The rock. Not a stone, but the rock. Okay? The rock. And Jesus said, I shall be building my church, and the gates of the unseen world, of the gates of hell, shall not be able to wrestle her down. Now, Gardner Ted Armstrong and Herbert W. Armstrong said that there hadn't been the gospel preached in this dispensation time for 1,800 years before they came along. Joseph Smith said that God appeared to him in the angel Moroni and told him that God was dissatisfied with all churches and he wanted him to start a new one. And they call that the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Charles Taze Russell came along and established what has become the Jehovah's Witnesses. All of them say that the Lord's church fell aside. Half of the Protestant world said the Lord's churches went into the Dark Ages and ceased to be. I don't believe that. I believe Jesus. What did he say now again, young lady? No?
Sorry.
You are Peter. But upon this church, I'll be building upon this stone himself, I'll be building my church, and the gates of hell cannot, will not, is not able to wrestle her down. Matthew 28, 18 through 20 now. Matthew 28, 18 through 20. Look at that. Matthew 28, 18 through 20. Brother Dan, you over there?
18 through 20.
Yeah.
And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen.
When's the end of the age? The Dark Ages? Was it Herbert Armstrong, Charles Russell? When was he's going to be with this church?
End of the church.
End of the church age. He's going to be with the church until the end of the church age. All right? He didn't fail us by leaving us without a witness. We've had to witness all the way through the church ages. The witnesses, I tell you what, there became, if you go out to Cal State, if you go out to Bakersfield College and study church history, you know what they're going to tell you about? The history of the Catholic Church and the evolution of the Catholic Church. But I'm going to tell you something. Baptists were alive all during those times underground, fighting with that group. Why? How many of you heard of St. Patrick? You heard of St. Patrick? Did we just have St. Patrick's Day here a while back? All right, St. Patrick. The Catholic Church canonized him, called him St. Patrick. And they got St. Patrick's Day now. That's when you wear green and drink green beer and all that kind of stuff. Patrick was a Baptist. Patrick's established 365 churches in Ireland. Now, the Catholics got all kinds of spooky stories about Patrick over there. But I'll tell you what history tells us, and even what the Catholic history will tell you. They fought Patrick because he was establishing churches and baptizing people without their authority, and they said, you stop. And he said, jump in the creek. I don't need you. He was a Baptist in England. They had captured him when he was young, Irish pirates, and took him in there, and then he escaped and went back to Britain, and God put a burden on his heart to go back there and preach. He was raised in a Baptist home. The strongest Baptist home. Putins and Claudia were in Britain and Wales. That's Paul's own disciples went over there and established early churches. One thing about it is Patrick went over there and established strong churches with them heathen Irish people. They were heathens, boy. These were bad people. And they had strong churches in that area. And then England was conquered. They went back to heathenism, and then Ireland reestablished Christianity in England. Stories. But that happened all through time. You can see this. I said that over the radio one night, and they flipped out. Catholic came over. What do you mean? Patrick was a Baptist. I said, study history. They'll tell you. So he went back and he asked all the priests. Oh, he said he wasn't bad. I said, go read your own books. And they'll say that he was not a regular Catholic, that he was a primitive Christian. And you know what primitive Christians were? They were Baptist. The Catholic-owned encyclopedias will tell you that. All right, let's go on here. And these are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stood for the Lord and the earth having stood. Now people say this is a church and Israel. All right? But light. There's going to be light shed among these people in the whole world. These witnesses are going to be very powerful. Go back now. During Jesus' ministry, his disciples got all excited one time, and they said, call down fire from heaven. Remember that? Call down fire from heaven. Who called down fire from heaven? You know the guy that did that?
Elijah.
1 Kings 18, 36 through 39. All right? 2 Kings 1, 10 through 14, Numbers 16, 35. Let's go look at some of these verses. All right? And if anyone tries to harm them, fire it proceeds out of the mouth of them, and it eats them up, or eats down the enemies of them. All right? That's what these 2 witnesses are going to do. And if anyone he may wish them to harm, thus by them they shall be killed. All right? Or to be killed. They're all going to be killed in the same way. Let's go back in the Old Testament and see what happened. This is part of the reason why some of them think it's going to be Elijah again. Okay? Who's over there? Are you over there, Brother Dan? 1 Kings 18, 36? Anybody in 1 Kings 18 yet? John, you over there?
Yeah. 1836.
Uh-huh. And then 2 Kings 1:10. David, I haven't got you to you tonight. Can you look up 2 Kings 1 and John? 18, 36 through 39.
Then it came about at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice that Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that thou art God in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word.
Okay, just keep on going.
Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that thou, O God, thou, O Lord, art God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell, and consumed the burnt offering, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God.
All right, now there we have Elijah calling down fire out of heaven. All right, like these 2 witnesses did. And then 2 Kings 1, 10 through 14, Brother David, are you there?
So Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I am a man of God, then let the fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50 men. And fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Then he sent to him another captain of 50 with his 50 men. And he answered and said to him, Man of God, thus has the king said, Come down quickly. So Elijah answered and said to them, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50 men. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. Again he sent a third captain of 50 with his 50 men. And the third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah and pleaded with him and said to him, Man of God, please let my life and the life of those 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Look, fire has come down from heaven and burned up the first 2 captains of 50 with their 50s. But let my life now be precious in your sight. And the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, go down with him, do not be afraid of him. So he arose and went down with him to the king.
All right, here we have Elijah calling down fire out of heaven, killing people. So, I mean, you can see that why people might think that one of the witnesses is Elijah. But I don't think he is, because Elijah didn't he was raptured, wasn't he? All right? All right, number 16 and verse 35, we find fire is judgment. All right, 16:35. Israel was, up until this period of time, Israel was ruled and led by patriarchs. Remember that? Patriarchs. The patriarchal system. That means the head father. That's where the Latin term pater familia comes from. The father of family. He was a spiritual leader. Mesh papa in Hebrew. Okay, the father of the family. And in Greek it's patria. The father of the family, the head of the family. The head of the family was the spiritual leader. But when Israel came out of Egypt, God changed it from the head of the patriarchal system into the system where all the tribes of Israel were going to go into the promised land, and all of them would have an inheritance. But the Levites were going to be the total heirs of the promises of God, and they wouldn't have any earthly heritage at all. All of they were going to be supported by all the rest of the tribes. They would have no land, but they would be the spiritual leaders of Israel. Well, Israel rebelled, and one of the weirdest things about it, the Kohathites there, they were a group that were going to carry the Ark of the Covenant, and they were the ones that were camped closest to the Holy of Holies in Israel, and one of these guys was named Korah, and he said, no way. We are not going to give our spiritual heritage just to the Levites. Every one of us is as good as the next guy. All of us can serve the Lord the same way. We will all still be patriarchs. And every family will have a patriarch to answer to God for him. And now this is what happens here. We have Korah's rebellion. Number 1635. And that's where we're going to end for today. Number 1635. Who's there? Anybody? Well, Loopy. Get.
Fire also came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense.
All right. These are the men now that Moses said, you go offer your incense. If God's going to recognize you people as priests also, you just go and get and they went out there real gladly and they were going to offer incense. And the fire of the Lord consumed them and wiped them out. So fire is judgment so many times. Do you have any questions before I turn you loose on the Word? Now you ask me some questions. I know they're going to have a service over here, and some of you have to leave and go to that. Any questions?
Well, I always heard that Christmas was a pagan holiday, but you said a while ago it was...
There was a book written by Alexander Hislop, and it tied in many of the pagan holidays with the holidays that the Catholic Church had established, and one of them was Christmas. And he brings out some pretty good ideas. But if you study Hanukkah, the Feast of Hanukkah, and you study Christmas, you're going to find out that Christmas came from Hanukkah. It didn't come from paganism. Now, in Europe, and Northern Europe especially, on December the 25th, they would have a big a drunken blowout. They would kill all their cattle except for their brute cattle, and they would make sausage out of them, eat them all up, and they would have one big drunken orgy until all the food was gone. They'd stay drunk and eat. That happened, all right, during that period of time. But Hanukkah was established in 185 before Christ. They had the Feast of Lights. They have their little trees in there. They have all of their celebrations. Okay, they light their trees. In Germany, it's where the Christmas tree started, wasn't it? Where was one of the greatest concentrations of Jewish people? In Germany. They had their Feast of Lights, and then the Gentiles and the Lutherans, all of these people, they had their Christmas holidays as well. They had their Christmas tree. What did they have lighting the trees at one time? Little candles. Like the Feast of Lights. And they started giving presents to each other, what I call Kris Kringle and all this kind of stuff. But the Jews had been doing this for over 1,000 years, 1,500 years already. You realize? They would give presents to each other, and they would sit around and sing Christmas, Hanukkah carols. Now you just put it all together for yourself and find out where. As a matter of fact, I've got a video that shows the Hanukkah and all the way celebrated. And I'm going to tell you something. Our Christmas is right out of the celebration of Hanukkah.
Well, when
Right
the
on.
Jews first started it, were they
Jesus,
doing it for Christ
yeah,
at that time?
they did it
Even though
because
he
they had taken the temple back from Antiochus Epiphanes, and they rededicated the temple. Jesus celebrated the Feast of Hanukkah. In John, the 20th chapter, I think it was, where he, John, the 20th chapter. Can't remember. Anyway, where he went up to the dedication of the temple, and it called also the Feast of Lights. It's called the Feast of Lights and the dedication of the temple. I'd have to look it up for you because I can't remember now exactly where it is in the Bible. But yes, he did celebrate the Feast of Lights and the rededication of the temple and what is called Hanukkah. All right? In his time.
And he called himself the light of the world.
Yeah, he called himself the light of the world. The one center, they have this candlestick here, all right. We have it, and it's got one center candle, and they call that the servant candle. And they light all the other candles off of this candle. So when he said he was the light of the world, they called it the Shama, the servant candle, and they light all the other candles of it. They light the other candle, and this was holy fire. And he said, I am the light of the world. Do you see where that might have come from? And even the Christmas tree and all that kind of stuff. They talk about it being all paganism. Now, one thing about it, Easter is pagan. You know, we're coming up to Easter Sunday. That is
Well,
pagan.
the Jehovah
And what he-
Witness,
Huh?
the Jehovah Witness, they think that Christmas is pagan and we shouldn't celebrate.
Well, Hanukkah was celebrated on December the 25th, 185 BC. Okay? Easter is a real problem, the way we celebrate Easter. It's celebrating the feast of first fruits is what it actually is, the resurrection. The resurrection. All right? We celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ on Easter. It should be called the Feast of First Fruits or something else besides Easter. Easter was a pagan celebration. That one is pagan. But Hanukkah, I don't think came out of paganism. I think it came right out of Judaism. All right? I can show you next week the place where it comes from, you know, the Feast of Lights, okay? I should have had it down here for now. I should be able to remember that, but I didn't. All right. Anything else? Shirley, do you have a question? No? Are you ready to go out and do something eternal? Go do something you can carry into eternity with you? All right. Let's have a word of prayer, and we're going to turn you loose on the world. Who wants to pray tonight? Who wants to dismiss us in prayer? Anybody want to dismiss us in prayer? No? No? Will you do it, Lucy? All right. We got a volunteer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you, Lord, and we thank you and praise you for who you are, Lord. We thank you that you are the light of the world, Lord, and that you have revealed yourself to us, Lord. We thank you for your word and how you continue to guide and lead us through your word and through your Holy Spirit. We thank you for the teachers and gifts that you've given them, Lord, that help us to understand your word as well. We pray, Lord, that we would represent you well throughout the week, and we ask that you continue to speak to our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, we'll We'll start out with 11 and 6 next week. Did that muddy up the waters about the 2 witnesses? Tell me, ask, now you didn't ask me, who are the 2 witnesses?
We don't know who it's
I
gonna
don't know who it
be.
is. I have no idea.
I don't either.
I just don't think it's gonna be Elijah and Moses. Elijah and Enoch, I'm pretty sure it won't be them. But all of those things are valid ideas and everything, but I don't know who they are.
I've been reading John MacArthur's book, and he kind of thinks it's gonna be Elijah and Moses.
Elijah and Moses.
But he doesn't know either, he said.
No. Elijah, I don't think it is, because Elijah is a type of the rapture.
The lawgiver and the prophet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, go out there and study and enjoy the Word. Thank you for taking part tonight. Enjoyed having you here. We don't want to